People don't fall in love with you because you're perfect. They fall in love with you because you make them feel something they can't ignore. And there are 3 psychological patterns that, when you understand them, completely change how people perceive you. The first one is called the mere exposure effect. This is simple but devastating in how well it works. The more someone sees you, the more they like you. Not because you're doing anything special, just because familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort breeds attraction. Think about it. You probably didn't love your best friend the moment you met them. You loved them after spending hundreds of hours together. Your brain got used to their presence. Their quirks stopped being weird and started being endearing. That's the mere exposure effect in action. Here's the thing, though. Most people get this backwards. They think they need to impress someone by being amazing every single time they interact. So they show up, they perform, they try to be their best self, and then they disappear for a week. That kills the effect. Instead, the people who build the strongest connections are the ones who are just consistently there. Not dramatically, just present. They text back regularly. They show up to the same places. They're part of someone's routine, and slowly, almost without realizing it, that person starts thinking about them more and more. The second pattern is something psychologists call the pratfall effect. And this one surprises people because it seems counterintuitive. You actually become more likable when you show vulnerability, when you mess up, when you admit you don't know something. We're all taught that we need to project confidence and competence to be attractive. And that's true to a point. But here's what happens when you're flawless. People don't connect with you. They admire you from a distance. They put you on a pedestal. But they don't feel close to you. But the moment you admit you're scared about something, or you made a mistake, or you're struggling with something, people feel permission to be human around you too. Suddenly, you're not a character they're watching. You're a real person they can relate to. And that relatability is where genuine attraction lives. The third pattern is reciprocity. This is the psychological principle that when someone does something for you, you feel obligated to do something back. But more importantly, when someone invests in you emotionally, you invest back. It's automatic. It's almost involuntary. Most people get this backwards too. They think they need to do things for the person they like to make that person like them back. And sometimes that works, but it can also create an imbalance. It can make them feel like they owe you something rather than like you. The real play is when you make someone feel like they're investing in you. You share something real with them. You ask for their advice on something that matters to you. You let them help you. And suddenly they're not just receiving value from the relationship. They're creating it. They're building it. And psychologically, when you build something, you care about it more. These 3 patterns work together. Familiarity makes them comfortable around you. Vulnerability makes them feel safe with you. And reciprocity makes them feel invested in you. But there's a deeper principle underneath all 3 of them that ties everything together. And that's what we're going to explore next. That deeper principle is called the consistency principle, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Once someone takes a position or makes a choice, they experience a psychological pressure to stay consistent with that choice. It's not a conscious thing. It happens automatically in the brain. Here's how it works. When you interact with someone, every small action they take creates a tiny commitment. They smile at you. They've committed to being friendly. They share something personal. They've committed to being vulnerable. They do you a favor. They've committed to caring about you. These aren't dramatic moments. They're barely noticeable, but they add up. The brain hates contradiction. When someone acts in a way that contradicts their self-image, they experience cognitive dissonance. It's uncomfortable. So they resolve that discomfort by either changing their behavior or changing their beliefs about themselves. Usually, they change their beliefs. They start to see themselves differently based on the actions they've already taken. This is why the 3 patterns we mentioned earlier are so effective. They don't just create positive feelings. They create a chain of small commitments that lock someone into a particular identity with you. When someone sees you regularly, they're not just getting comfortable. They're committing to the identity of someone who likes spending time with you. When someone shares something vulnerable with you, they're not just building trust. They're committing to the identity of someone who is close to you. When someone does something for you, they're not just being nice. They're committing to the identity of someone who cares about you. Once that identity is locked in, the consistency principle takes over. Their brain will work to maintain that identity. They'll seek out reasons to keep seeing you. They'll find ways to stay vulnerable with you. They'll look for more opportunities to help you or do things for you. It becomes self-reinforcing. But here's where it gets interesting. The consistency principle works even better when the commitment is public, or when someone has to explain their actions to themselves. If they've told other people about you, the commitment gets stronger. If they've had to justify why they care about you, the commitment gets as deeper. Their brain doesn't want to look foolish or inconsistent in front of others, or in front of themselves. This is why people who introduce you to their friends fall harder. It's why people who have to defend you to someone else become more loyal. It's why people who've invested time or energy into the relationship become more attached. Each of these situations creates a public or internal commitment that the consistency principle then protects and reinforces. The dark part about this isn't that it's manipulation. It's that it's completely involuntary. People don't realize their own psychology is working against them. They think they're making free choices, but they're actually locked into patterns by their own need to be consistent with themselves. And once you understand how consistency works, you can design interactions that create these commitments almost invisibly. The person never feels like they're being pushed into anything. They feel like they're choosing. But their choices are being guided by the architecture of how you're interacting with them. And the more commitments they make, the more they have to invest in the idea of being close to you. It becomes harder and harder for them to walk away, because walking away would mean admitting that all those commitments were a mistake. This is where vulnerability becomes your secret weapon. Most people think love is built on perfection, but it's actually built on the willingness to be imperfect in front of someone. When you show genuine weakness, not manufactured sadness, but real struggle, you trigger what psychologists call the pratfall effect. It's the tendency to like people more when they reveal flaws, especially if they're otherwise competent. Think about it. The person who has everything figured out feels distant. The person who has it mostly figured out but admits they're scared sometimes feels human. They feel like someone worth protecting. Here's the mechanism. When someone sees your vulnerability, their brain releases oxytocin. That's the bonding chemical. But more importantly, they feel trusted. You've given them access to something you don't give everyone. That exclusivity matters enormously. It makes them feel special. It makes them feel chosen. And people don't fall in love with people who make them feel ordinary. They fall in love with people who make them feel like the only person in the room who matters. The second dark psychology principle is what we call mirroring, taken to its logical extreme. Most people know about mirroring, matching someone's body language, their speech patterns, their energy. But the deeper play is mirroring their self-concept. This means understanding how they see themselves and reflecting that image back to them, but slightly elevated. They see themselves as funny. You laugh at their jokes more genuinely than anyone else. They see themselves as intelligent. You ask them questions that let them demonstrate that intelligence. You're not faking it. You're just creating space for them to be the version of themselves they most want to be. When you do this consistently, something powerful happens. They start to associate being around you with feeling like their best self. Their brain creates a reward pathway. The presence of you becomes chemically rewarding. It's not love yet, but it's the foundation. Love grows in the space where someone feels most like themselves. But here's the catch that separates this from manipulation. These principles work because they're based on genuine human psychology. The vulnerability has to be real. The mirroring has to come from actual attention, not performance. The commitment loop has to be built on real interactions, not artificial escalation. The moment you're faking it, the moment you're performing instead of being present, the whole structure collapses. People sense inauthenticity faster than they sense anything else. The third principle ties everything together. It's called the scarcity principle, but not in the way you might think. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being genuinely unavailable in a way that matters. You have a full life. You have commitments, passions, friendships that don't revolve around them. This creates what psychologists call the mere exposure effect combined with absence. When someone can't have unlimited access to you, they value the access they do have more intensely. They think about you more between interactions. They wonder what you're doing. They feel the absence. The key is that this has to be authentic too. You're not strategically disappearing. You're living a life worth living, and they get to be part of it, but not all of it. That boundary is what makes them pursue. That's what makes them feel like they're winning something, rather than being given something. So here's where most people mess this up. They create the scarcity, but then they panic. They think the other person is losing interest, so they come back too hard, too fast, and suddenly that tension collapses. The magic dies because they revealed they were playing a game the whole time. The real skill is holding the line, not out of stubbornness, but out of genuine self-respect. When you have other priorities, other people, other things that matter to you, you're not performing indifference. You're actually unavailable sometimes. And that's different. People feel the difference. Think about it from their perspective. If someone drops everything for you, what does that tell them about your value? It tells them you have nothing better to do. But if someone has a full life and they still make time for you, that's a compliment. That's them saying, your presence is worth rearranging things for. This connects to the third psychological principle, and it's maybe the most powerful one. It's called the pratfall effect. Basically, people are attracted to those who are slightly imperfect, not flawless. But here's the catch. The imperfection has to matter. It can't be a manufactured flaw. What kills attraction is when someone tries too hard to seem perfect. The constant self-promotion, the humble bragging, the strategic vulnerability, that's actually just another form of control. People sense that. They know when you're managing an image, but when you're genuinely human about your struggles, your doubts, your failures, something shifts. You become real. And real is magnetic. Real is what people actually want to be around, even though they'll never admit it. They'll say they want confidence and success, and they do. But what they're really drawn to is authenticity wrapped in confidence. So you admit when you're wrong. You laugh at yourself. You talk about something you failed at without turning it into a lesson about how you learned and grew. Sometimes failure is just failure. You're still figuring it out. And that vulnerability, paired with the fact that you're still moving forward anyway, that's what creates genuine connection. The combination of these three things is lethal. You're pursuing your own goals and living your own life. So there's natural scarcity and genuine unavailability. You're not trying to be perfect, so there's authenticity and relatability. And you're not desperate for their validation, so there's no neediness in the equation. What you're actually doing is making them feel like they're choosing you, not like you're choosing them. And that's the entire game right there. People don't fall in love with people who need them. They fall in love with people who enhance their life. The distinction matters more than you think on. What you're actually doing is making them feel like they're choosing you, not like you're choosing them. And that's the entire game right there. People don't fall in love with people who need them. They fall in love with people who enhance their life. The distinction matters more than you think. So let's bring this home. You've now seen 3 psychological mechanisms that shape attraction at a level most people never think about. Scarcity makes you valuable. Mirroring makes you familiar and safe. Strategic vulnerability makes you real. None of these are manipulation in the traditional sense. They're not tricks you're playing on someone. They're frameworks for understanding how human connection actually works. The reason these work is because they're not fake. You can't fake scarcity if you're actually available all the time. You can't fake mirroring if you don't genuinely listen. You can't fake vulnerability if you're always performing. So the real work isn't in executing some technique. It's in becoming someone worth falling in love with, and then letting that version of you show up consistently. Here's what separates people who understand this from people who don't. The people who get it don't obsess over the other person. They focus on themselves. They build their own life so compelling that scarcity happens naturally. They listen so deeply that mirroring becomes automatic. They're honest about their flaws because they've made peace with them. And when you operate from that place, attraction doesn't feel like strategy anymore. It feels like inevitability. The dangerous part is thinking you can use these principles without actually doing the internal work. You can't mirror someone's interests if you're not genuinely curious. You can't create scarcity if you're secretly desperate. People sense that contradiction immediately. It's not conscious on their end, but it registers as off. And when something feels off, attraction dies. So here's your actual takeaway. These 3 psychological principles work because they're rooted in how people actually function. But they only work when you're genuinely embodying them. That means building a life worth being scarce in. That means developing the listening skills to actually mirror someone. That means doing the therapy work to be vulnerable without being needy. If you're looking for a quick fix to make someone fall in love with you, this isn't it. But if you're willing to do the real work of becoming someone worth loving, these frameworks will accelerate that process. You'll understand why certain approaches work and others don't. You'll know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that clarity alone changes everything. The people who master attraction don't do it through tricks. They do it through understanding themselves and understanding others. That's not dark psychology. That's just psychology. Use it well.